I woke up this morning and there was a butterfly on the window, and I couldn't remember what it was. Is it that they smell with their tongue or taste with their ears or something? So I googled it, and this is where that fantastic skill or ability or gift or whatever you want to call it, the natural part of who I am that makes itself available to finding what it is that I need to find and revealing what it is that needs to be revealed as a surrender to the oneness of all that is, allows Google in all of its algorithms to be the intuition of this moment in answer to the question, do butterflies hear? And it turns out they do. So whereas in the human ear, sound travels through the air in waves, and then the waves hit a membrane the way a drummer hits the skin of a drum. And this vibration is transmitted to the cochlea of the inner ear in a human, but in butterflies, they have a chorded tonal organ. But in both cases, like the human and the butterfly, the auditory nerves send these signals to the brain, which we call hearing sound. So this scientist, this researcher, Jane Yak, at the Carleton University in Canada, wanted to know how butterflies hear. And I think one of the interesting things was a lot of the results on Google said that butterflies don't hear, but that they receive lots of information about the world through their feet. And so it's only since these researchers have been looking and found and proven in their scientific way that butterflies have hearing organs and brain functions similar to human hearing, that we now have a picture of butterflies that was very different to 6 months ago. But it's not just that science is this constantly changing entity, this field, a library of knowledge that's in a constant state of change, which in and of itself is fascinating. I think it's also the facts, the things that we call facts, that are fascinating. So the article by Sarah Hewitt, here are a couple of quotes, a few paragraphs that piqued my interest as the but why child that wants to know how everything works. So the vibrating membrane is a different size and thickness in every species, which means it resonates in response to different frequencies. Our tympanic membranes, our as in humans, for instance, vibrate only to frequencies between 20 to 20,000 hertz. This limits us to a relatively small slice of the auditory spectrum. Imagine the symphonies that we are missing out on simply because our ears are tuned to a different wavelength. Butterflies have ears on all sorts of body parts: thorax, abdomen, legs, mouth, and even their wings. When butterflies perch, they fold their wings and expose their ears, which are present on the underside of their wings. It's a bit like how we sometimes turn our head toward a noise to hear it better. And for me, the question that comes up is, how can you not be fascinated by that? How can you not be interested in the way our senses work? And not just that, by all those exceptions to the rules that we keep finding out, like how a beehive is considered a single living organism, even though it has lots of individual bees in it. And the way fungi aren't a plant or an animal, but something in between. And how they communicate between trees and plants and flowers and animals. All kinds of information in this kind of sharing network thing that they set up. I'm just fascinated by all the little bits of information as much as I am by the function of science itself, and how it kind of segregates its information as factual, where other types of information can't be proved. In that scientific method, which requires something being reliably repeated. And I question that reliability, because to me, everything is connected and everything is in a constant state of change. So how can you have the same inputs in an experiment, create the same outcomes, when at every moment all of the inputs have been altered or, rearranged in some way? So you never have the same equipment. Even if it's a day older, it's a day older and something has changed. If the atmosphere is different, if the people are a day older, like everything is involved in the reality of that reliability, which in and of itself is fascinating. Not to dismiss science or to elevate other forms of knowledge, just as a form of fascination itself, simply as a means of knowing the world or not knowing the world and being curious, simply as a means of what to pay attention to, what's relevant, how to be present to the depression or the confusion or the excitement or, the reality of whatever it is that seems to, appears to, feels to be occurring in this moment, which includes so many amazing things. The sounds of birds, the sensation of barometric pressure, the memory of warped past, the hopefulness of, bleak future, the judgments and twinges that we've separated out into psychological and physical and relationship and business issues can all be present in this moment, can all be part of. I guess we see it as a symphony because we understand the world has many instruments. But ultimately, if that symphony was understood as an ocean that had no parts, then it would be allowed to be one. It would be allowed to be what is, without that separation or with that separation. And the oneness of that ocean would include the perception of those distinct parts of what we call our experience, which I guess can only really occur if you have a sudden awareness of it, or you were born with an awareness of it, or you begin to ask yourself the question, about what assumptions are in the questions that I'm asking. Even a simple question, what makes us human, has a clear scientific answer. It has to do with our DNA. But if you bother to look at the question itself, if you begin to question the questions, if you begin to let the facts fall away, if you begin to wonder, if you begin to be present to the mystery, I call it the mystery of mastery, where our ontological and epistemological and cultural and perceptual biases are all, under scrutiny is one way of understanding it, but it doesn't have to be an investigation to find out whether someone was lying to you. It can just be a wonder, a presence to not knowing. And in the presence to not knowing what makes us human, you look at the question and reveal its assumptions, not because you want to make the question wrong or the answer incomplete, but because you're willing to be available to the rest of the sentence. And if the entire world, universe, reality, experience, God, spirit, oneness is one long sentence, then wherever we come into that sentence, whether it's the question of what makes us human, which has a clear scientific answer, which is our DNA, and when we look at that question, we reveal the assumptions that makes that possible, and those assumptions include that things are distinct from one another and that facts can be known, and that humanness is a function of distinctions that allow reality to exist, and our investigation can be trusted, which relies upon our senses, and those senses are limited within a spectrum according to the things that can be known, according to the investigation that can be trusted. Wherever we come into that sentence, if the reality of truth is one long sentence, we will lead ourselves back to oneness. We will lead ourselves back to the ocean. So no matter what we think we're focused on or trying to solve, or what problem we're facing, what experience we're having, we're kind of jumping into the one long sentence of oneness. And just knowing that there is a one long sentence of oneness allows us to follow a curiosity and have the experience not as separate things, but as part of the purpose and meaningfulness of this moment. But ultimately, you need to know what it is that you know. Because even the words that I'm speaking are not being transmitted in any way. They are a function of your long one sentence. So whatever it is that you need to be present to in this moment is already occurring, regardless of what it is that I have to say.